Why did the papers arrive in a bright lobby with everyone watching? How did a birthday toast turn into a slow legal storm that I kept pretending I could outtalk? Can a husband's silence be louder than any fight? My name is Evadne Price, and I tell my story the way I lived it. I work in marketing, where charm is a tool, not a sin. I always believed attention meant value, and I took value wherever eyes offered it. My husband, Jonah, called himself steady, and I called him careful until careful felt like a cage. He asked for small boundaries with his best friend, and I said he sounded insecure. He asked why I needed the extra spark, and I said I was bored, not cruel. People at work said I lit up a room, so I chose to stay on fire. My sister told me it was normal flirting, and I decided that meant harmless. His mother warned me to respect moments meant for family, and I said she needed to relax. I told myself a marriage should survive a little noise, because noise proved we were alive. I told myself Jonah would not make scenes, because kindness was his armor and his weakness. I said I could manage the story and keep every side smiling. I said I was not the villain, only honest about wanting more. I said many things until the papers said something else. I woke early and told myself I would set the tone for the day. I made coffee and placed 2 mugs on opposite sides of the counter because I liked the look of clean space. I said the arrangement felt balanced. Jonah came in quietly and asked if we could keep tonight simple. I said we would keep it light and fun, and I added that he should not worry so much. He tried to smile and asked again about boundaries with Marco. I said he sounded jealous, and I told him I just enjoyed friendly attention. He reminded me that Marco was his best friend, and he said it hurt when I pushed lines in front of people. I said I could handle myself, and I said he should trust me if he loved me. I leaned on the counter and checked my phone. The Friday group chat posted a meme about boring husbands, and I sent laughing faces. I told myself it was just a joke. When Jonah reached for the sugar, our hands almost touched, and I pulled back to tuck my hair. I told myself I pulled back because the kettle hissed. He noticed the 2 mugs sitting apart and asked if I wanted mine on the patio. I said separate mugs meant nothing, and I told him the colour just matched the light. He said okay, and began tidying the stack of mail I had flipped upside down. I flipped it again and said I would handle it later. I went to our bedroom and changed into a dress that looked casual in photos. I told myself the fabric read soft and innocent on camera. Nora padded in and asked if the party was today. I said yes and promised a slice of cake before bedtime. She asked if Daddy would blow many candles this year, and I said yes again, with extra cheer. I kissed her forehead and sent her to brush her teeth. Jonah stood in the doorway and said thanks for handling the school drop-off. I said I could do it, but I added that I might stop by the office early. He nodded, and his tone stayed even. On the way out, I paused at the apartment stairwell mirror and took a quick picture. I sent it to Marco with a note about the dinner location, and I told myself it was helpful planning. Marco replied with a short message about drinks before the party. I said I would think about it. I justified the reply by telling myself that I needed to feel seen before a long family night. When I turned back inside, I heard a small sound from Jonah's office. It was a soft, digital beep, like a recorder. The sound stopped when I touched the knob. He opened the door a second later and said he was sorting class audio notes. I said he did not have to hide schoolwork from me. He said he was not hiding anything, and he asked if we could talk without phones later. I said we would talk if he avoided lectures. In the kitchen, his laptop sat open to a tidy spreadsheet with initials and dates. He slid the screen down as I approached and said he needed to get to school. I laughed and said he was doing secret math. He said it was nothing important. He reached into a file box and took out a small USB stick, and he taped it under a folder labelled taxes on the shelf. I asked if that was his new organisational trick. He said it helped him keep track of copies. I said he was a neat freak and that I loved him for it, and I used a sweet tone to make the T's sound kind. By lunch, I was at my desk in the open office, and I posted a story of my coffee with the caption that big nights need big energy. Cammy walked past and asked if I could step into a meeting later. I said sure and told myself it was about a client draft. I messaged Livia and asked if she could come over after work to help me pick a dress for the party. She replied that she would try, and she said to be kind to Jonah today. I rolled my eyes and wrote that people only saw his sad eyes and missed my effort. She sent a thumb up and stopped replying. I picked up Nora from school and stopped for a few things at the corner store. A neighbour asked if Jonah was ready for the party. I said he liked simple things, and I said I tried to keep up. The neighbour smiled and said he seemed like a good man. I said he was fine, and then I changed the subject. In the car, Nora sang about cake and candles again, and I told her she could help arrange the plates. I told myself that I was doing family well enough, and I told myself that the rest was my own private life. Back home, Jonah arrived just after us. He set his bag down and said he would cook pasta for the three of us before the party. I said I would rather keep room for dessert, and I joked that he could eat alone if he needed energy to manage me. He did not laugh. He went to his desk and closed a drawer with a soft click that still felt final. I followed and leaned in the doorway. He asked if we could agree that Marco would stay respectful tonight. I said Marco was always respectful. He said he felt otherwise and asked if I could help. I said I would not babysit a grown man. I moved to the hallway mirror and traced lip balm on my mouth. I told myself I looked bright and open. I said aloud that I would walk to the stairwell for air. Jonah said we were fine and that he would leave soon for an errand. I asked if it was the bakery. He said it was personal. He picked up his phone, and a reminder slid across the screen with the words, meeting, personal. He tapped it away when he saw me looking. I told myself he was being dramatic to scare me straight. I told myself I would not be scared. I stepped into the stairwell and sent Marco a quick message that I could stop by before the dinner. He replied with a location pin and said he would keep it short. I said I would try on the way. As I stood there, my phone buzzed with a silent vibration from a contact saved with a single emoji, and then another buzz from an unknown number that lit the screen. Inside the apartment, a door latch clicked as Jonah moved down the hall, and his footsteps paused outside the stairwell. I held my breath and decided I would go anyway. I reached the rooftop bar before sunset and told myself it was only a quick drink. The sky looked clean and soft, and the city felt ready to clap for me. Marco waved from a high table and said the view made everyone generous. I said the air made my dress float in a nice way. He asked if Jonah was coming early, and I said Jonah had an errand. He asked what kind of errand, and I said he liked to wander stores before birthdays. I watched notifications stack on my screen, and I told myself I could control the angle of the night. 2 friends from the Friday group arrived and said the pre-party needed content. I said content would save us all from boredom. They lifted phones, and I tilted my head in the way that works in photos. Marco placed a hand at my waist for balance, and I said it was a joke pose. The camera clicked and clicked again, and a short boomerang caught me leaning into his shoulder. I told myself the clip looked sweet, not loud. A message from Livia came in and said to keep it calm tonight. I sent a heart and told her I was fine. She replied that Jonah had been quiet all afternoon. I said he always did that before events. I ordered 1 light drink and said it would be my last. Marco laughed and said restraint did not suit me. I said I could be good when I needed to be. The friends asked for a caption suggestion and said the crowd loves a teasing line. I said to write that I was spoiled by the best. When they posted, I watched the hearts grow. A co-worker named Darius commented with a smirk, and I told myself he liked to stir. Another co-worker tagged me and said the city had a new queen. I said in a reply that the crown was heavy and I wore it anyway. Jonah texted me and said he would meet us at the restaurant on time. I said perfect and added a small heart so I looked supportive. He asked if Marco would be there. I said of course because they were friends. He replied with a single dot and said he hoped for a peaceful night. I told myself he sounded guilty for making me feel small last week. I decided he needed to see me shine before he could love me properly. We left the rooftop and headed toward the restaurant district. Marco said the plan was to keep it playful. I said I was always playful. He asked if Jonah would mind if we grabbed a quick photo by the mural. I said Jonah did not own walls. We took the photo, and I let the angle make us look closer than we were. I told myself closeness in pictures was not closeness in life. I pushed publish and watched the reach grow. The restaurant host confirmed the long table and said everything was ready. I said thank you and asked for brighter candles. Marco looked at the seat map and said he should sit near me for conversation. I said yes because he told better jokes than most. I felt my phone buzz with a new tag in a story from the rooftop. The clip showed me laughing while Marco leaned in like he owned the frame. I said the clip was cute and the internet would forget it tomorrow. I walked 2 blocks to clear my head and promised myself I would keep limits. The street smelled like bread from a small bakery, and I thought about home. I pictured Jonah's calm face and the way he stirred pasta slowly. I told myself calm was not love. I told myself love was being visible. A group chat pinged again, and now a co-worker added the rooftop clip to a work story with a wink. I told myself the office loved flair. I did not think about policies or whispers. I reached my building lobby to pick up a jacket, and I saw Mr. Poe, the concierge. He said Jonah had passed by earlier and asked about parking. I said Jonah was always practical. I took the elevator up and walked into the apartment for a minute. The desk lamp in Jonah's office was off, but the room held a faint smell like tiny smoke from a printer. A single sheet sat face down on the tray. I lifted the corner and saw it was blank. I laughed and said he was practicing being dramatic. On the wall planner, one date wore a red circle. I asked myself why he circled a normal weeknight. I told myself it was for school duty. I put on the jacket and checked my phone again. New comments argued about the rooftop clip. One friend wrote that Jonah was lucky. Another wrote that I was brave for loving life. I liked both and told myself the crowd agreed with me. Livia called and asked if I had posted wisely. I said the posts were light and normal. She asked if Jonah felt respected. I said respect had many forms. She went quiet and said she would sit near Miriam at dinner. I said that seat would be dull. On the way out, the elevator paused at our floor, and I heard Jonah's key in the lock. He came in with a small bakery box and said he would bring it to the restaurant later. I said he could leave it there to chill. He looked at my jacket and asked if I had been cold. I said I needed the fit to look sharp. He nodded and said he would see me soon. His phone lit up with a reminder labeled Meeting Personal, and the time showed a later slot. He swiped it away fast. I said he did not need to hide calendars. He said he was not hiding anything and asked if I could be kind tonight. I said I am always kind when people let me be myself. I walked to the corner store to buy gum and saw a neighbor buy the flowers. She asked if we were celebrating big. I said we were celebrating simple because Jonah liked safe. She smiled and said safe sounded wise. I said wise killed romance. She looked at the flowers and said some people enjoy quiet. I said quiet bored me stiff. She put down the flowers and said she hoped the night would be gentle. I said it would be fine, and I left before she could answer. When I reached the restaurant block again, my phone shook with a new work notification. Cami asked if I could stop by her desk for a quick word tomorrow morning. I told myself it was about a client check-in. A second later, I saw a tag from Darius that placed the rooftop clip on our company story with a dancing icon. I told myself it was good PR for me. I lifted my chin and stepped into the foyer. The host smiled and said the room was ready. Behind me, a flash from a passing phone lit the glass. Inside my bag, my screen lit with a calendar invite I did not recognize. I dismissed it and moved forward. In my head, I said the night still belonged to me. Then the actual ripple hit. Cami sent a direct message and asked for a quick word first thing, and the notifications stacked in bold. At the same time, a small printer behind the bar spooled a test page, and the sound cut the hum. I felt my stomach rise and drop, but I told myself I was fine. I fixed my hair and walked toward the long table while another tag arrived with my name and Marco's face. The night stretched and waited. I reached the community center before Jonah's group finished their small robot race, and I told myself I was supportive. The gym smelled like rubber and markers, and the floor shone under old lights. Jonah stood with a clipboard and spoke to the kids about teamwork, and his voice carried like a steady line. I waved at a parent and said I loved how he helped the neighborhood. A little boy tugged his sleeve and asked if I was the mom who makes good posters. I said I work in marketing and could make flyers if they wanted. Jonah thanked me and said the kids liked simple designs. I smiled and said simple was my style today. I held my phone low and filmed a short loop of him kneeling to fix a wheel. I told myself the clip would remind him I was still watching. Marco texted that he was outside near the side door, and he sent a smoke ring emoji. I said I would step out for a minute. Jonah glanced up and asked if I could hand out the last medals. I said I would in a second. I slipped through the door and into late light, where Marco leaned against the brick with a careless grin. He asked if I was ready to have fun tonight. I said I was always ready. He said Jonah would never stop me because Jonah hated scenes. I said Jonah understood that energy needed air. Marco laughed and said he liked my words. I stood close enough to catch the smell of clove smoke and told myself I was collecting confidence, not trouble. Darius from work crossed the lot with a bag of snacks for his nephew, and he spotted us by the wall. He lifted his phone and waved it like a greeting, and I waved back with 2 fingers. He asked if I was doing brand research, and I said I was reviewing event flow. Marco joked that I was the queen of flow. Darius chuckled and said the company story loved this neighborhood spirit. He raised his phone again and did a quick pan, which caught my shoulder leaning toward Marco. I told myself it looked friendly, not intimate. I said the company should support local programs. Darius said totally and walked inside to find his family. I returned to the gym and clapped for the final team. Jonah handed out medals and crouched for a photo with the kids, and I stood at the edge and smiled like a calm spouse. He came to me with the clipboard and asked if we could leave early to change for dinner. I said I needed 10 minutes to check the restaurant layout. He nodded and said he would close up soon. His phone screen lit as he set down the clipboard, and I saw a calendar note that said, Downtown 3:10 p.m. I asked what downtown thing he had, and he said it was personal. I said he was making mystery where none was needed. He said we would talk later and thanked a parent before I could reply. In the foyer, I updated the table diagram on my phone. I placed Marco across from me and 2 friends beside him, and I told myself it was better for conversation. I moved Jonah next to his father so I could get air if he went quiet. I heard children cheer for one more race and I felt a small buzz in my pocket. Marco asked if I could stop by the gastropub patio before we headed to the restaurant. I told myself a short hello would steady me. I sent a heart and said 5 minutes. I walked past a bulletin board where someone had pinned a flyer with a tear-off strip for a notary service, and I wondered why anyone needed that anymore. I told myself I did not care. The patio sat behind the pub with string lights and chipped paint. A server slid a tray toward us and asked if we wanted water. I said yes and said I was keeping a clear head. Marco told a story about college and Jonah, and he said Jonah used to be looser. I said Jonah still had charm but hid it. Marco stepped closer and asked if I felt trapped lately. I said I felt unseen, which was not the same. He said he could fix that, and I said I only needed a spark, not a fire. He smiled and touched the back of my chair. I checked the gate and made sure no one I knew stood there. Darius passed by again to toss a cup and lifted his phone for a casual sweep. The lens flashed in the string lights, and I told myself the angle read clean. We left the patio and walked toward the restaurant street. The evening wind pressed my jacket against my back, and I felt sharp and centered. Marco asked if I would keep the jokes light. I said I would give the room a show but not a scandal. He said a little danger made people listen. I said attention was not danger when I was in control. He nodded like he believed me, and I felt taller for a second. I turned a block early and ducked into our building lobby to grab a scarf. Mr. Poe looked up from his desk and said Jonah asked about temporary parking for a pickup later. I said Jonah loved to plan. Mr. Poe smiled and said planning kept a building alive. I keyed in and took the elevator up, and the car hummed like a held breath. Inside the apartment, the office door was closed, and the printer tray had a single sheet facing down. I lifted it and saw a blank page with a faint roller mark. I set it back and laughed at the drama. On the desk, a laptop flashed a small cloud sync pop-up that said file uploaded successfully, and the window faded as I moved. I put on the scarf and told myself he was probably backing up school things. Back in the hallway, I met Jonah at the elevator as he came up with a box from the bakery. He asked if I had everything I needed. I said I did and added that I had arranged the seating for good energy. He said thanks for planning. His phone buzzed as the doors opened, and a preview showed meeting, personal. He clicked it away without a word. I asked if he had time to breathe before dinner. He said he was fine, and asked if I could please be kind tonight. I said I was always kind when people let me be myself. The foyer of the restaurant smelled like citrus and warm bread, and it felt like a stage with soft lights. The host greeted us and said the long table was set. I checked the candles and asked for stronger flames, and the host nodded. Friends began to arrive with bright faces and loud voices, and Marco slipped in with a casual grin. He asked if he should start the first toast, and I said I would do it. Darius walked in with 2 colleagues and said he loved a good birthday room. I said the city was ready to sing. Jonah stood near his parents and thanked people for coming, and I waved from the center like a banner in wind. The chairs scraped as everyone settled, glasses tapped, and a small chant began for a toast, simple and rhythmic. I felt the old engine in my chest turn on. Phones rose in the air with tiny lights, and a camera flash cracked across the table like dry lightning. I told myself the moment belonged to me, and I lifted my glass to speak while the heat of the room pushed everything closer. The long table waited like a quiet stage, and I told myself I owned it. I raised my glass and said Jonah was steady, and I said steady kept ships safe when I wanted to run for storms. People laughed because the line sounded clever, and I felt taller. I added that Marco kept the room lively, and I said every birthday needed a spark. The laughter grew louder, and Marco grinned at me like we were in on the same joke. Jonah's parents sat near the end, and Miriam folded her hands like she was praying for kindness. Theo watched the candles and kept his face still. I told myself they were bored and needed colour. I passed a napkin to Marco and brushed his wrist. The server leaned in to pour water, and several phones hovered with small lights. I could see my reflection in a dark window, and I said, I looked brave. Plates arrived with careful clatter, and a chant for another toast rolled up from the middle seats. I stood again and said Jonah was predictable in the best way, and I said predictability kept a home from falling apart. I watched him nod and thank me with his eyes, and then I added a line about Marco always keeping the light on. The laughter turned sharp, and I let it cut, because I wanted the room to feel my edge. Marco shifted in his chair and slid one knee forward. I felt the brush under the table and told myself it was nothing. I took a sip and looked down the table at Jonah. He held the stem of his glass and did not drink. He asked if I needed anything, and I said I needed people to relax. The noise swelled as someone told a story from school, and plates scraped. Under the tablecloth shifted again, and a hand travelled where it should not have been. I turned my face so the room saw only my smile. I told myself that I could contain anything if my face stayed calm. I told myself it was a tiny thrill, and it would pass like wind. My leg tensed and then settled, and I laughed at a joke that did not land. The laugh sounded too bright, and it made me feel like hollow glass. I saw a tilt in Jonah's focus, a stillness that felt heavier than a shout. He set his glass down with care and looked at me, not at Marco, and the look said he had measured the angle and understood it. I said inwardly that he loved to overread things. I said he would never make a scene. A camera flash cracked across the table, and several people lowered their phones in the same second. The server froze with a cake box near the kitchen door and waited for a cue. The room shifted from play to pause, and I could feel it in my shoulders. Marco withdrew his hand with a lazy shrug and reached for his water like nothing happened. I said to the table that surprise makes a party feel alive. I tried to pour the energy forward, but it would not move. Jonah breathed in and out once, and he thanked everyone for coming, and he said we could enjoy dessert another time. He rose quietly and stepped toward the entrance. No chair scraped under him because he lifted it back with care. He told the server that we would take the cake to go. He walked past me without a glance, and I said he was just getting air. I laughed and said birthdays make him shy. The laugh sounded like plastic tossed against a wall. Miriam stood without touching her plate, and she said she would check on him. Theo reached for his wallet and handed his card to the server before anyone else could move. He said he had it covered, and he said we could go home. Livia stood with Nora and said it was late for children. Nora asked if the candles would be for tomorrow instead, and she pressed her drawing flat on the table because the corner had curled. I told her we could do candles at breakfast. She asked if Daddy was sad, and I said he was just tired. She asked why the room stopped laughing, and I said the lights made my head hurt. Livia shook her head and said we would talk later. The Friday friends went quiet, and someone deleted a story. The server shut the kitchen door with a soft sigh and placed the cake on a sideboard. I collected my bag and said I would bring the cake to Jonah. People made space for me like I carried something sharp. Outside, the air felt colder than the room, and I saw Jonah standing with Miriam near the curb. He said he would walk for a bit and meet us at home. I said he was being dramatic. He said he needed quiet. I told Miriam that he had spoiled his own night. She said his night had been taken from him at the table. Theo pulled the car around and asked if we were ready. I said we were fine. Marco came out and said the wine had hit too fast. I said the wine was not the problem, but I used a light tone to hide the meaning. He said I was brave. I said bravery was just deciding not to blink. At home, the apartment felt too neat. I set the cake on the counter and told myself I would fix this with a good apology. Jonah arrived later with steady steps and said he would sleep in the guest bed. I said he was punishing me. He said he was protecting his peace. He collected a stack of papers from his desk and slid them into a binder labelled household, and he placed it on a shelf next to a thin binder labelled utilities that was too heavy for its name. I told him he was doing theatre with stationery. He asked me to stop talking and let the house rest. I said silence was not healing. He went to the hallway and closed the guest room door softly, and the sound felt worse than a slam. In the morning, I took Nora to the park, and I told myself a cheerful day would reset the tone. She ran toward the swings and turned back with a look I could not ignore. She asked why Daddy walked away from his cake. I said he needed a walk because big rooms make him shy. She asked if he did not want to make a wish. I said wishes can wait. She asked if I hurt him, and the swing drifted as she watched me. I put a hand on the chain and said we all had big feelings last night. She said he looked sad, not big. The words slid into my chest and stayed there. Livia joined us with a coffee and asked if I was ready to say sorry in full. I said I already had. She said sorry does not include jokes about sparking the room. I said everyone was dramatic, and I told Nora to pump her legs higher. When we got home, I stood at the kitchen island and scrolled through last night's photos to build my rescue post. I told myself the right caption would soften the memory. I tapped the gallery and found a new image I did not remember taking. It showed a document on our desk with a shadow of my hand beside it, as if someone had lifted my phone while I laughed. The image was cropped tight with no letterhead and no title, only clean blocks of text that meant preparation. I stared at the photo and my breath shortened in a slow way. My phone buzzed with a group chat ping, and another buzz came from an unknown number that I swiped away. In the silence between those small sounds, Nora came in from the hallway and asked again if Daddy would blow his candles tonight. The room held still while a child asked a painful question, and I said we would see, and the words felt thin as paper as I opened the next image to see if there were more. On the balcony, I rehearsed softness, and he listened without arguing. In the kitchen, 2 mugs stood on opposite counters, and he only asked about Nora's pickup. In the garage, the car faced the street, and labelled boxes read, Home, Auto, Bank. His phone blinked a silent reminder. Downtown, 11:20 a.m. Then he dismissed it. The office door clicked, and the faint smell of printer toner curled down the hall. I saw Archive A and Archive B on his clean desktop, and a single USB sat dated on the shelf. He said he would handle this properly. A shredder hummed once, then stopped, and the house went still. I stepped into the office tower lobby and told myself I would win him back with a photo. The marble echoed under my shoes and the concierge nodded this was routine. Jonah walked in with even steps, and I lifted my phone to frame us. A man in a plain blazer asked my name and said he had documents for me. I said this looked theatrical, and Jonah said he was following the process. The envelope touched my fingers, and the lobby felt colder at once. The server explained a divorce petition with temporary financial and possession orders, and noted acknowledgement happened here. An elevator bell rang while two co-workers slowed their pace. I said we could talk at home, and Jonah said the schedule was in the paperwork. He thanked the concierge and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed on his calm face and the room kept echo.